Okay, let's pick up where we left off. Remember to engage with the video, like, comment, subscribe if you haven't done those things, because it boosts the algorithm. Now, last time I was talking about the early days of Born Free, so let's keep going. I was talking about the first interview, and it's really interesting because I was just looking, and the first interview with FGC people, which was Gutex and Dominion, there's a really big, long break before those start to pick up again. In fact, I didn't even find them at first. And I think the video finished, unfortunately it finished early because an alarm came on, and I was really just saying that I used lots of different methods to get eyeballs onto my content, and one of those was to send my interviews or any of my content, to be honest, to places like SRK and event hubs and say, look, this is content, put it up. It was a mutually exclusive sort of thing, and sometimes I would send videos and be like, if they were about statues or whatever, I would send videos to like event hubs, especially because they tended to cover things like cosplaying and stuff like that, whereas SRK tended to be more like tech focused, like very sort of regarding the actual ins and outs of every single one of these games. You know, SRK was more encompassing. So I would send them videos saying, look, you do cosplay and all that stuff. Hey, I've got this review of a statue of Vega or Akuma or Guile or whatever. I think you should throw it up there, see what people think. And they did. A lot of the time people would just go, my God, that's expensive. I wish they were. But they did appreciate and value those statues. Anyway, when I go through my YouTube channel, when I sort from old to new, there's loads of videos of me reviewing statues, and I even have my old haircut at that time, which was I want to say this was like 12 years ago, right? It was like a mullet type thing. I forget what they called it, but like it had a miniature mullet with mohawk mullet type thing. I don't know. It was a while ago. There were some videos of me playing video games, which I uploaded of Street Fighter 4. Nothing particularly special, just things that I felt kind of proud of. Then I started to do interviews with people in relation to statues. So when I was on the West Coast, when I was going to Evo and going to San Diego Comic-Con, I actually went and visited Jerry Macaluso, who was the guy who headed up and owned Sota Toys. I'm sure everybody knows about Sota Toys, which was at least people who grew up in the era of Street Fighter, which was the figures, the action figures, but they were really well done. I think they were really cutting edge. I seem to remember being told that they were considered some of the most cutting edge action figures in the world at the time, because they had little replacements, like you could have Ryu and you could stick a fireball on him and you could do, it was just stuff basically. When I was doing these interviews, I was learning as I went. So I had contacted my cousin who lives in Hollywood. He's always been, he went to film school and all that stuff. So I was like, I need to get a camera and I need to get something for sound. And he was the one who said, use the Zoom H4n, which is that big mic you always saw me holding. And he was the one who said, get this DSLR, I think it was a Canon. The problem with it was that it cut off every 10 minutes. So I'd have to keep an eye on it. So I'd have like a screen which came around and I'd flip over and I could see the time and all that stuff. Now, one of the things that I was like I want to say it was like almost like a little bit of a meme for people who watched my content, was that I would be looking at the camera every now and then. I would turn around and I would give it a look. And even though I was, facing the person I was talking to, I would turn around and I would give the camera this strange look. And a lot of people thought that I was reacting to what was being said in the conversation, when in fact I was just trying to keep an eye on the camera and make sure that it was still on, because sometimes it would just switch itself off after like 10 minutes. There's a whole legal thing about DSLRs and how long they could record for, which I found out much later on. So a lot of my interviews, if they went over 10 minutes, then obviously I would have to keep an eye on the camera. So while I was interviewing people, this may not sound like much, but like I'm trying to make sure that the camera is always on. We have to make sure the camera is in focus, and, you know, and we're in focus and in frame and all that sort of stuff. I have to make sure that this audio is working properly and it's not too over the top or too you know, can't be heard or what have you. And then something else I later realized was that lighting was really important, but it took me a while to make that mistake, which is in here. But I made the mistake of doing an interview which had bad lighting, and whilst I found a way to sort of fix it and it was okay, and actually for a lot of interviews, a lot of the time people also, you know, the listening part of it is a big deal anyway. It took me a while to figure all of that stuff out. So I was a one-man band, right? I was running around with these cameras, and before I started to move people into rooms to book them, to get them to come to me, which was a difficult thing to do given that I was just not known to people. My work was not known to people. A lot of it was trying to catch people who seemed like they'd be up for an interview, seemed friendly enough, seemed like we could go to the edge of a tournament or something by a wall, and just I could set my camera up real quick and just we could do it, you know. So there was that going on. Anyway, so I did interviews, loads of stuff to do with statues I got down here. It's quite amazing. I've got statues from Lord of the Rings. And this was my real passion at that time. I think I was probably still working for Saatchi's, and so this was like weekend stuff. But did some unboxings, showed off my collection, had cat videos of Goki, which is great, so I can, you know, all of this stuff is here for me if I ever want to go back and have a look. I was so excited about collectibles, and then there was videos of like beta prototype versions of fight sticks. Like this one here is Quamba Q5 fight stick next gen prototype at Evo 2014. I uploaded, like, you remember Street Fighter 4? One of the wonderful things about Street Fighter 4 was the fact that there was much more freedom in terms of interaction between the two players, in terms of talking. I think sometimes if you both had your mics on, you could talk. I forget, maybe it was Xbox chat, but I just remember that freedom was pretty good. But then also there was voice messages would get sent to each other, and salty messages, you know. And I had this incredibly salty message which I uploaded, which said, "You can suck my dick, bitch," but it also had a whole bunch of stuff with it, so I uploaded that because I thought it was funny. I uploaded combos. I don't know, like I uploaded a lot of stuff. Did another interview with Jerry Macaluso. Statues, even the Alex statue review, because I know a lot of you love Alex and followed my channel because of Alex and the Alex skits I did. There was 10 years ago, there was an Alex statue review. And what I tried to add to these reviews, because a lot of people were doing this on the scene, but I was trying to keep it consistent, but I was also trying to add some value to it. So I would really tell them I would have a sort of set list of things to tell them, including how much it cost to buy firsthand and how much it had appreciated in value and how much you could sell it for now and how much you should be paying for it on the secondhand market, to try and help people navigate that, because that took a while to get used to. Azura's Wrath statue, some Bloodborne gameplay. It's just like, you know, I was just trying to see what stuck. I was throwing things at the wall, see what stuck, you know. Yeah, just random shit. Oh, Witcher gameplay. You know, this was 10 years ago. Absolutely one of my favorite games of all time. I have these, they're called memorable moments. So don't know, one of these just says punching bears and it has 54 views. Then I started to drift. This was kind of interesting because I think this was around about the time 2014, 2015 was around about the time that Street Fighter 5 was announced. And then we had Ono dropping hints about, you know, which characters were going to be in the game. And there's a video here which says, is Oro in Street Fighter 5? Hear me out, ... in brackets plus Alex. That's funny because Alex seems to reappear a lot in my videos. But I think I sent that off to Event Hubs and it got like 15,000 views. And these were were my sort of prediction videos. So I was predicting, like, based on like clues that Ono had dropped, you know, and logic and intuition and all that stuff, and then also the lore, like when Street Fighter 5 takes place and what should have happened before and what should be happening after and all that stuff. So I had a load of videos where I was sort of just having ideas about you know, it was fun. It was just fun. They were fun videos predicting, having a conversation in a way, just sort of saying, this is what I think might happen. This is why I think this character might be in this game at some point, if not at launch, you know. And it was kind of polarizing. You know, I'd have people who, particularly on Event Hubs, I'd have people who would get mad, you know, about the content for whatever reason. But I used to start the videos, after a while I started the videos by saying, listen, this is just a bit of fun, and if it's not for you, just move on. Just move on. I'm telling you now what I'm going to do. If you don't like it, just go. Move on. You don't have to sit through this. I'm just having a bit of fun. But, you know, it's funny because I would get some nasty comments, and I remember bumping into, talking of like people who made an impression on my life. I remember at some point, and I don't remember when, it might have been much later on, some 16-year-old kid came running up to me at Comic-Con and said, you're that guy, you're famous, you're the interview guy, you're YouTube, you're this, you're that. He couldn't remember what my alias was on YouTube, you know. But he was like, yeah, can I get a photo with you? I was like, wow. Yeah, of course you can. But to be honest, like inside, I was trying to keep it cool because I was like, wow, this is really cool. Like being recognized by someone. Oh my God. But I was, at the time, my headspace was like, I think I just got like a shitty comment and I was like really pissed off. And I'd mentioned it to him, and this kid just said, they're just jealous. And it was interesting because it was coming from a kid who was a totally different generation to me, who'd was growing up with YouTube and the internet and social media and all that stuff. And I was thinking, his take is one where he was born into it, a bit like Bane, right? You know, that quote from Bane, you know, I was born into it, raised by it, or whatever, I forget. But like, that's sort of like how I see a lot of these kids these days, is like they have a slightly different understanding of how social media works than some of us who were there before and saw it grew and at times took some of it very personally or whatever. And he was just like, yeah, no, they're just jealous. And that was it. And that was like such a, you know, whether that's true or not, it was just like, well, there is bound to be a bunch of people out there who kind of just are just going to be haters or whatever. And so it was like quite a nice, that kid I'll always remember that kid. In fact, I think I have a photo somewhere on my phone somewhere of when he took the selfie, and I said, send that to me, because it was a big moment for me as well. I don't think if he knew that, but because I was trying to keep it cool. But it was like the first photo that someone had asked to get with me, so I was like, oh yeah, cool. So anyway, I did these videos where I was like trying to guess what the characters were, and they were just fun, but then some of them started to become correct, And then actually what happened was there was 1 or 2 characters that were sort of leaked to me by people in the know, because they were enjoying my videos. Not people you'd expect, by the way, not anyone you know, just people I met at Evo who were like businessmen or whatever, who had seen let's say presentations by Capcom behind closed doors, you know, probably had to sign an NDA, but were just like, fuck it, I'm gonna let this guy know. So there was an element of that going on too. But anyway, about 9 years ago, it seems, I did an interview at E3 with PR Balrog. I did that because he always seemed like a nice chap, outgoing, says what he wanted to say, made people laugh, very likable. And I was playing Street Fighter 5, I think, for the first time. I think we were all playing it for the first time at E3. And I just happened to, we had to line up, and basically you got to play, I forget how it worked. I think you got 1 or 2 games. It wasn't like winner stays on, that's for sure. But I think maybe you got like 2 games. I forget. Honestly, I forget the rules. But they had it pretty well organized. But it definitely wasn't winner stays on. Although I feel like there was a faction of the FGC that decided, some of the pro players who decided to do a winner plays on section. But honestly, it's so fuzzy, my memory on that. But playing it, for being one of the first people in the world to play that game at E3 was absolutely phenomenal. All the great players were there, and I remember Takedo being there, and I remember there being some talk of Street Fighter 5 feeling, these guys are, you know, these guys are no fighting games, and they're geniuses in a way. I mean, this is why probably some of my interviews worked, was because I was in awe of anybody who could do anything good, well and good, you know. And these fighting game players, some of them are just brilliant, and some of them are just look at stuff and can I'm doing this movement, like you looking under the hood, right? They just look at a game and they know how it works. You know, like I've the way people react to trailers and things, there are certain players who will react to trailers and just be like, okay, I understand how this game works, and I've got a theory about a combo that I think could work, and then the game lands and they do it and it works, and I'm just like, you saw a trailer and it just that sort of stuff always blew my mind. And at the heart of all my interviews was exactly that, right? There was really only one question at the heart of all my interviews, and that was, why are you good and I'm not? Really, the question is, why are you good? But like, I always threw in the why am I not as well, because I wanted to, that's how it was, everything was framed, was like, the interviews were supposed to be a very, very casual player talking to professionals and trying to bridge that gap between the casual player and professionals, and I positioned it that way. It wasn't until later that I found out that all the pro players, not all, but like a lot of the pro players would watch the interviews, and because it wasn't so important what I was saying, what was important was what the player was saying. So sometimes those players were reaching people at various different levels, you know. So I was in the end I was kind of capturing all different types of people and levels of player, and maybe sometimes I wasn't digging into like the really technical stuff that, you know, everybody had something else they wanted probably to ask, I'm sure, you know, and that's part of the reason some of my interviews went on longer and all that stuff, and I can talk about the evolution of that, no problem at all. But yeah, anyway, the PR Balrog interview, whilst I loved it and enjoyed it, I got the lighting wrong, and so it kind of looks a bit messed up. And then that's when I had to figure out lighting. Like, lighting's a big deal. I was just feeling my way through. But I had where I'd met him was playing Street Fighter 5, and me and him had to play against each other. And of course, like, he's beating the shit out of me, right? And then I won a round, right? And I was like laughing and just joking, and I was like, oh my god, I won a round, I beat PR Balrog, and I shouted it to everybody because I was a confident fucker sometimes. And I was like, I just beat PR Balrog, I beat him in a round, da da da. And bro, I am so slow sometimes. I'm so slow to process stuff. So what everyone was doing that I hadn't picked up on at all, because I was just trying to win by mashing buttons, what I hadn't picked up on was that in order to get more time to play, these players were losing a round so that they would get 3 rounds, right? And so of course he lost a round to me, and I just thought I'd sort of fluked my way through it because it was a new game. And yeah, like, you know, luckily I was really just joking around, and I wasn't really sure what was going on at the time. I was just having the time of my life, to be honest. But later on I was like, oh crap, he lost that round on purpose, didn't he? And so yeah. Anyway, do you know what? It's funny, these videos are like, yeah, taking me back, man. It's crazy. Anyway, so then I started doing stuff which nowadays would be absolutely an absolute no-go. But I can't remember why I used to do this. But I used to record the stream and then upload. Like, I would record certain matches on streams, like in streams in Singapore, or that maybe happened in the middle of the night or something, or even CEOs on here. Sorry, Alex. Not that I took many views, to be honest, but like I would find matches and upload them. I think everyone was doing it at that time, because I don't think the content was very well organized. Like, I think it was like the early days of streaming, and it wasn't like the FGC was sort of taking the streams and then breaking them down, and I think the whole community was doing that, and in many ways it was mutually beneficial. I think that's how it was 10 years ago. Nowadays it's different. Obviously you don't record streams, it's copyrighted, whatever. But I used to upload matches for views, for potential subscribers, that sort of thing. Just did that with, so it looks like I did it with SEAM. I can't even remember what that stands for, but SEAM. And then CEO, I did a bunch, it looks like. Look at these names: Daigo, 801, Strider, Smug, Momochi, Takedo, Defeatly, Sanford Kelly, bro, with a Sagat, Infiltration, Takedo, Gamer B. Oh man, bro, Forward, Margot. Yeah, bro, this was my element. Street Fighter 4, those were the, oh god, yeah, I loved that era, I really did. It was such an epic era. PR Balrog and Snake Eyes. I tell you what, Snake Eyes is always Zangief in competition, right? As far as I know, I've been out of the loop for the last 5 years or so, but like, bro, when he plays as Akuma, it's beautiful. Like, it's beautiful. Anyway, so then I guess I moved on to stuff from Comic-Con 2015, and I had like statues, but I also had like Udon stuff, which was really cool, and stuff that I'd collected. I had a Shadowloo watch. Yeah, I started to talk to a lot of these people behind the scenes of these things, because I wasn't asking to be paid. Maybe I should have, but I didn't have a big enough audience then, I don't think. But like, I wanted to do something that felt like I wanted to get the inside track on things, and so that my videos would have something special to them. and it would be sort of mutually beneficial sometimes. But a lot of the time I would get paid with merchandise. You know, people would send me things to review and I'd review them. And by the way, if you want to send me something to review, I'm right here. If somebody wants to send me a snack box, that would be lovely. Even though everyone, I mean, I don't know what one more review is going to do for the snack box. But yeah, there's a lot of reviewing stuff, and then gradually getting to know people behind the scenes, things like that. Loads of udon stuff. It looks like I went through an udon phase. Lots of speculation about Street Fighter 5. And then we get to... Ooh, okay, so I got some interviews here. These guys became sort of like guys that I interviewed a lot over the years. Dominion, L.I. Joe, and Snake Eyes. And that was at Defend the North. And I turned up at Defend the North a lot because that was in New York. And as the years went by, eventually Defend the North was... the guy who ran it basically started, he was really keen on me doing the interviews over time, and so like he would line people up and make sure those players, like he would just, I learned a bit from him in terms of kind of ordering players around, to be honest. Just sort of getting them lined up, and or you know, like you're coming with me and we're doing this now, and he would send them over after they'd finished a fight or something. Like he would fit it into the schedule whereby it'd be like, now you go talk to Born Free. But Dominion was just so brilliant. He always was so brilliant, so supportive, and always there to answer questions, and just had like that level of he was exactly what I was looking for in terms of an interviewee, like the way he would go into detail and answer questions and stuff. Snake Eyes as well. And also interesting, you know, because Snake Eyes and Dominion were sort of like right at the peak for the Americans at that time. And then there was L.I. Joe, who was always just the best, you know, because that guy, you know, he's got such great character, and he's such a wonderful person to speak to. And he also he was, you know, he's a charismatic guy, right? So he always made me feel good about what I was doing, because he had, you know, he's been in a lot of these guys have been in the scene from the very beginning, but he's seen it all, even at that stage. Like he had seen it all, having been a player, having been a commentator, having been a host, and all these things. So I think this is really where things started to kick off. You know, there was the interviews, and there was the Street Fighter 5 speculation, and yeah, that's probably a good place to pick up again as we move forwards. It's like this is the groundwork, the early days of Born Free, and I think it will get more interesting as we go along. I don't know, but this might have been when I had the interview with Knuckle Dude that I didn't air, because it was short, and he was maybe shy, but he was certainly young. He was young, but he was brilliant. You know, like I have nothing but incredible respect for that guy. And one of my favorite interviews, when we get to that point where we start talking about my favorite interviews, I think the one that always comes to mind is probably the last one I did with him, because I think I did 3, and then I did this one where he just sort of opened up, and he actually, on that day, he said to me, this was later on, by the way, I remember on that day he said to me, listen bro, I'm not doing interviews with anyone else. Like, there are people asking to do interviews with me, there are people, you know, it was the early Street Fighter 5 days, I think, and he said there are companies or whatever, you know, like various esports people who want to speak to me, but I've told them no, but I'll do an interview with you. So that already made me feel special. But I remember we did the interview, and he really opened up, and it was like yes, in my head, it was like, yes, this is fucking gold. To me, it was gold. It was like, here we go. And Uncle Do's opening up. It was just so good. But I'll certainly talk a lot more about that later. But what was also true is that the very first interview I ever did with him lasted about 2 minutes, because he was just like, yes, no, and that informed me in regards to my questions going forward. That made me think, okay, these questions I need to make sure that these questions can't be answered with a yes or a no. They're going to need some elaboration. I am going to have to work on my side of things in terms of help trying to get people to elaborate. And actually, if someone just wants to, if someone is sort of just saying yes or no, whether it's because they're shy or because they don't want to do the interview or whatever, I don't know the reason, but like, I tell you what, next time I'll turn up with 50 questions and we'll manage to fill 5 minutes. But yeah, like I think the third interview I did with him was like maybe my favorite. I think it was the third, but we'll get there. We'll get to like my favorite interviews and all that stuff. But it's been about 30 minutes now. So I would just say this. I'm sure you're all just watching CEO. So that's cool. So I'm probably might be talking into the void, but I know there's a small group of you who are hardcore who are following very closely, and I'm not really covering promises today. I did go for a run yesterday. It's Sunday. I sort of am feeling a bit more like I'm going to push this out, and it's going to be a little bit more of a chill day, and then we'll pick things up tomorrow. But I will go for a run tomorrow because I've been going for a run every other day and it's been making me feel better, and getting sunlight and all that stuff has been great. If you want to donate to help me out while I'm going through this down period in my life, then there's down below you'll find Ko-Fi to donate if you've ever enjoyed any of my work, and let's frame it that way. If you've ever enjoyed any of my work and feel like you want to make a donation because of that, then down below you can. Or if you simply want to buy me a pizza, because that would be nice on a Sunday evening. I had one last week, and I haven't made any promises about diet yet, so I think I could still get away with that. Anyway, guys, peace out, and I know this has been a long one. I'm experimenting, but the main thing for me is I'm being consistent, and this is part of it. Consistent videos, right? Peace out.